It's like a dream come true, a $300 million inheritance and our own company. When the employees saw my sister-in-law, Mary, celebrating my father's inheritance, they began to whisper to each other. The employees were ecstatic, and Mary said triumphantly, "Please be quiet. This is the point which my husband will inherit the company and $3 million. Hearing this, one of the employees began laughing uncontrollably. "What's the deal?" Sitting beside his perplexed wife, my elder brother was reading the will from the lawyer. My brother's face turned pale as he read. "Look at this." When my brother showed her the will, she screamed. Lucy is my name. I'm 29 years old and work for my father's business. When he was young, my father had the foresight to start a business from the ground up. It's since grown to a modest-sized enterprise with many employees. Of course, soon after launching the business, he incurred debt, and even as a small child, I could imagine how difficult it must have been for my father. Even after the company grew, I wanted to help my mother, who mostly did clerical back-office work. My parents encouraged me to attend college and pursue a career of my choosing, but my dream was to work for the company that my father had worked so hard to build. That was the first thing that came to mind when I was considering my career path after graduating from high school. Bob, a veteran employee, was the first person to mentor me when I joined my father's company. Bob patiently taught me the fundamentals of business without looking at me through the lens of being the president's daughter. I was able to learn more about the company thanks to Bob. On the other hand, my brother Tom, who's just 2 years older, went to college to study management. From a young age, he was proud to tell his college friends that his father was running a business and that he would eventually take over the business. Tom's friends would ask, "What are your plans after you graduate from college, Tom? Don't you have to look for work?" "I don't need to look for work because I'll be working for my father's company. I'll eventually be the company's president, so I'll take my time gaining management experience until then." "So you're going to be the next president of the company? Then your life will be safe and secure. I'm jealous of you." One of Tom's friends remarked, "Tom, you have a younger sister as well. Isn't there going to be a fight over who's the successor?" "Younger sister? I do, but she's a high school graduate and a simple person." "That's something you say a lot." "She appears to be doing some behind-the-scenes work for the company. If I become president, I'll keep her on as long as she listens to me." My brother was blowing money and fooling around under the guise of gaining experience as a business manager. He knew that if he behaved well, his friends would flock to him. There was no end to the number of women who wanted to date him because of his position as the company's next president. My brother chose the most flamboyant and attractive woman to marry. Mary was her name. After a lavish wedding, my brother and Mary went on a honeymoon abroad, built a mansion, and began their married life together. This was all done, according to him, to obtain the status of company president. Mary appeared to be content with her life with Tom, who listened to her every wish and allowed her to enjoy all of life's luxuries. I'm sure she wouldn't be interested in a life like mine, one where I work alongside my mother as a humble backstage employee in my father's company. "Lucy, you don't look like the CEO's daughter, do you?" she asked. "You don't appear to be the daughter of the company's president." Mary would often look at me and laugh whenever we met at family gatherings. "I don't like to live a lavish lifestyle," I said. She looked at me as if I were a moron. "I feel sorry for you because you were born as the daughter of a company's president, but you have no idea how to spend money." "What? You live at home with your parents and you have a lot of money, so you don't need to work so hard." Beside, with your title as president's daughter, shouldn't the men be flocking to you?" My brother agreed. "I'm sure that's true. Lucy's always been very modest, so no one would imagine that her father is the president. And apparently, she treats the other employees normally. Come as a surprise. There are still many things I don't understand about my job. Many of my coworkers are better at their jobs than I am, so I can't act like a big shot," I refuted. But my brother said, astounded, "That's why you're useless. A boss should be able to stand tall so that he's not derided by his subordinates, such as his employees. Allow the other employees to handle the simple, tedious tasks. I suppose my father and I are the only bosses in this house." "You should not look down on your subordinates, no matter how powerful you are. My father, too." My brother cut me off when I tried to respond, looking annoyed and frustrated with me. He said, "A logical woman is not well liked by men." After my brother spoke up, Mary followed. If you keep saying things like that, I'm sure you'll never get married. You should try to make yourself more appealing. Don't you agree, Tom? Yeah, well, when I become president, I might fire a humble employee like you, Tom said. My brother and Mary only said what they needed to say, and they quickly left. My mother, who'd remained silent during this interaction, consoled me after they had gone. She said, "You're doing an excellent job with the company, which greatly helps me and your father. Don't be concerned about what Tom says." My father nodded, a stern expression on his face. My parents had previously expressed their displeasure with my brother's ideas to his face. But after that, my brother and Mary became visibly upset and stopped visiting our house for over a month. I recalled the depressing atmosphere at the time, so I suggested to my parents, "Tom and Mary are free to say whatever they want." After that, Tom and Mary continued to live their lives as they pleased, dining lavishly at high-end restaurants and vacationing at famous resorts. The purpose was to give the impression that Tom would someday be president of my father's corporation. My father was working hard to expand his business at that time, but one night at home, he complained of chest pain. I said, "Dad, are you all right? Try and relax. I'll call an ambulance." "Lucy, get this." While we waited for the ambulance, my father pointed to a drawer and told me he had a letter for me. I quickly took the letter from the drawer. "I want you to read this. If anything happens to me, everything else is up to the lawyers," he said breathlessly before losing consciousness before the ambulance arrived. And despite being rushed to the emergency room, he died without regaining consciousness. My brother and Mary, who were away on a trip, were unable to be there for my father's death. They returned from their trip 2 days later at the conclusion of my father's funeral. Tom said, "We're just glad we arrived on time. I never imagined my father would pass away while we were on vacation." I was completely taken aback. My brother and Mary arrived at the funeral without a care in the world, making no mention of the fact that my mother and I had been left to handle the arrangements. I asked my brother about it in private so that the employees present would not hear. "Couldn't you have arrived home earlier?" "What? I couldn't because I'd already booked our return flight," my brother said, without apologizing, and then addressed the employees. "Thank you all for your help, and please, from now on, leave it to me to take my father's place in an honorable manner." Mary looked around at the employees who had quieted down in response to my brother's words, and she said admiringly, "That's exactly what Tom would do. Everyone is speechless because they're so impressed." "Right? It's only natural given my dignity." Pridefully, my brother asked, "Lucy, isn't the ceremony just about to start? Please hurry and show us the way." I was irritated by my brother's late appearance and his arrogance, but I led him, Mary, and the employees to the meal ceremony party table. My brother continued to act arrogantly as we ate. "Isn't the quality of this food questionable, Lucy? This will degrade our father's standing as president." Mother and I already discussed it, and we came to an agreement on the food. Besides, I don't want you telling me what to do. This is why people have no idea what it means to be president. He gave orders not only to me, but also to the other employees. "Serving other people, you're pointless." I rushed to stop him after hearing him order Bob, a veteran employee, to do his bidding. "Oh, Tom, you're so bold. Don't be impolite to Bob." "What? They're rude people. Why should I be humble in front of a mere employee? These guys ought to have more regard for me, the president." Mary was also getting into the spirit of things, and she charged at me. "That's right. Stop talking down to Tom, the company's president, Lucy. If you continue to disobey him, he'll fire you. He has the authority." A man appeared just as my brother and his wife were blustering on. He said, "Please, excuse my interruption. Your father asked me to look after his inheritance." He was the lawyer my father had retained while he was still alive. Then I remembered. My father had told me shortly before his death that he had already hired a lawyer. It seemed my father had been considering his own death and had spoken with a lawyer several years before he collapsed. My brother and Mary's eyes lit up when the lawyer mentioned inheritance. They gladly welcomed the lawyer into their room. Tom said, "Thank you for attending. The sooner we complete this task, the better. Come on in." But as he spoke with the lawyer, Tom began to sob. "Wasn't my father's inheritance worth $300 million? When Mary heard this, she squealed with delight. $300 million? That much money in a company that belongs to us is a dream come true. When the employees heard this, they began to whisper. Mary triumphantly declared to the mourning employees, "Quiet. This is the moment when the company and its $300 million inheritance pass to Tom." Hearing this, one of the employees began laughing uncontrollably. "What's the deal?" My brother had received the will and was reading it next to Mary, who was wondering what the employees found so funny. My brother's face turned pale as she watched. Mary, according to the will, the entire company will be given to the eldest daughter, to Lucy." He stared at the will for some time and then began shouting, "This is not possible! This is incorrect!" In a troubled tone, the lawyer said, "This is a legally enforceable will." My brother's voice became more and more choked. "What? I couldn't care less. How can Lucy become president instead of me? Perhaps Dad was simply getting old and senile." Yes, your father lacks sound judgment. A will made by a senile old man is null and void." Hearing these words, I completely snapped. I couldn't let these two people insult my late father. I couldn't let anyone, even family members, bring down my father, who was a good man until the end. Enough! My brother Tom becoming president would be even more unthinkable in my opinion. The words infuriated my brother. "What? Are you trying to tell me that I'm unfit to be president?" I responded without hesitation. "You are correct. How can you be president of this company if you've never even helped it?" "Don't be a moron. Mary and I even built a house fit for a president, and we went to great lengths to make me look the part. Do you mean building a mansion unsuitable for a man of your stature, or eating at fancy restaurants? That's not good for business. It's only money. After all, didn't Father cover the majority of the costs for the new house and extravaganza?" "How in the world would you know that?" "Just before he died, Dad left me a letter. In the letter, he detailed all the money he had spent on you and stated it would be given to you in a gift during his lifetime. As a result, your share of the estate is practically nothing." Mary panicked when she heard this. "Wait a second. Isn't this inheritance worth $300 million? Did we already spend that much? It's not fair that we got so little out of it." The employee who had just burst out laughing quickly approached Mary and informed her that $300 million comes from the company, not from personal assets. I believe all the employees here are aware of this. "Money from the company? Isn't that something that can be inherited?" I informed Mary it is indeed. The money from the company is not inheritance for the family, so I'm pretty sure my brother's share is negligible. That breaks my heart. "Oh, no!" Lucy was completely taken aback. "The inheritance, $300 million. My brother stood up as if he'd had an epiphany, and he yelled at the employees. "You want your company president to be a plain woman like Lucy? You must believe I'm more qualified to be president. I have the same amount of charisma as my father." Not one of his co-workers agreed with him. Bob then took the initiative and began talking with my brother. "Your predecessor, your father, was a charismatic man who founded the company during his lifetime. However, you and he are not the same person." "What?" "What you have is arrogance, looking down on us, not charisma." "What?" My brother became enraged when the employee calmly refuted him. "Tom, you may be an employee of our company, but we, the employees, rarely see you at work." "That's because I don't have time to do any work for the company. I was too busy networking with others. I couldn't have time to do work anyone could do." "You call going on trips and fun at night networking? Isn't that all there is to say?" Bob sighed and went on. "In that regard, Lucy worked hard every day to learn more about the company while performing her unobtrusive, behind-the-scene duties." "Bob." "I sense the same sincerity in her as in your father. Lucy is the right person for the job, according to all of us at the company." The other employees nodded enthusiastically in response to his words. I was moved and responded, "Thank you very much. To be honest, I'm surprised by the suddenness of the news, but having witnessed my father's enthusiasm for the company firsthand, I care about it just as much as you do. I look forward to your continued assistance." The employees warmly applauded as I bowed deeply. Encouraged by the applause, I said firmly, "All of you here are important friends who have helped our business. Anyone who ignores them is unfit to be employee, let alone company's president. You can be fired by the president. My brother became irritated upon hearing this. What in the world are you on about? I'm your brother. What exactly are you on about? You even said that if you became president, you would fire me, brother. Ugh. I can't afford to pay a salary to an incompetent employee simply because he's family. This is completely absurd. Someone, please speak up. With a pitiful expression on his face, he begged for assistance from those around him, but the employees gave him only cold stares. Realizing that no one was on his side, my brother and Mary fled the scene. After that, Tom lost his job and survived on the small inheritance he had received, but the funds quickly ran out. Can you lend me money, Lucy? I threw him to the ground. I was disgusted by my brother, who even after being fired, did not try to find a new job and was still relying on his family to help him. I told my mother flatly not to give my brother any money. His friends, who had once been so supportive, abandoned him after learning that he had lost his position as president to his sister. When Mary married my brother, she had been planning to be the wife of the company president, and not a single one of her friends seemed to sympathize with her. When their living expenses became unsustainable, my brother and his wife decided to sell their mansion. The money from selling their house may have allowed my brother and his wife to relax and resume their previous lifestyle. However, without any income, my brother and his wife's savings quickly ran out. When they had nothing left to sell, they could no longer pay their living expenses. When they finally decided to give up and work, no one would hire them because they had never worked a day in their lives. Tom was eventually able to find a part-time job at a convenience store. Now he is working at a convenience store, a job he is unfamiliar with, and has been told that his work is inadequate by other part-time employees who are much younger than he is. Mary, too, can no longer be a full-time housewife like she used to be. She has joined the part-time housewives she used to mock, and she now works as a cashier at a supermarket from morning to night for a low monthly salary. I, on the other hand, am using what I've learned from my behind-the-scenes work to help the company. Bob and the other employees have been working with me, and the company has been steadily growing. My brother's case may have actually strengthened employee unity. I vowed to continue working with my mother to grow the business in order to bring more joy to my Father in heaven.
Since you can't even do housework properly, you might as well just keep working.
I couldn't help but get irritated by those words. Originally, it was Thomas who was against me working. Jealous of me becoming a supervisor, then hitting me up for money when my salary increased, and now telling me to keep working all the time. It's unbelievable how he thinks. So selfish.
What's up? You got a complaint? If you have a complaint, then you might as well do whatever you want to.
Sensing my irritation, Thomas retorted with a sullen expression. Fine, I'll do whatever I want then. Unable to stay silent, I said that and went to bed grumpy. I was furious with Thomas, but work doesn't wait for anyone. The next day, as soon as I got to the office, I requested a meeting with the director. As I had declared to Thomas, I decided to do whatever I want and take on a certain task that had been proposed before. My name is Anna. I'm 30 years old. I married Thomas, who's the same age, about 3 years ago. We don't have children yet, so we're currently a dual-income couple working hard. In the past, many people thought that women would become housewives once they got married, but those times have changed. Although we work at different companies, we're both employed full-time and help each other out with the household chores. Broadly speaking, Thomas is in charge of laundry and cleaning. I mainly take care of meals and have been trying to make beautiful dishes for Thomas since we got married. At work, I strive to perform as well as men, and I recently got promoted to supervisor. Becoming a supervisor means both the quantity and quality of work increases. However, Thomas, despite being a fellow employee, didn't try to understand my situation.
We had this for dinner yesterday, right? Aren't your dinners a bit too careless these days? Please make an effort.
One evening at dinner, Thomas said that. Thomas is still a general employee, a rank-and-file worker. Perhaps he felt bitter that I received a title before him, and instead of celebrating my promotion, he started nagging every day. Of course, I don't have as much free time as before, but I'm still properly doing my share of the household chores. Knowing that Thomas's complaints stem from jealousy, I have no choice but to adopt a humble attitude. Sorry, I do prepare in the morning, but it inevitably gets late preparing dinner after coming back, so I've been making side dishes in advance.
Side dishes? So you're saying it's inevitable that it's the same every day?
That's not what I mean.
Don't make excuses. Basically, you're the one who said you'd take care of meals when we got married, right? The women at my company manage their households well, even while raising children. I always tell you that.
I couldn't say anything. Of course there might be such people at Thomas's company, but it's pointless to compare with others. Moreover, the women Thomas often mentions is actually working part-time. Not that I look down on part-time work, but being equated like that feels somewhat off. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm gonna forgive you because I'm kind, haha.
Thomas starts eating again as soon as I apologize. I wish he would eat without saying anything if he's gonna eat anyway, but there's no helping it. When I talk about Thomas to a friend, they tell me to think of it as practice for parenting. Indeed, even without children, looking at Thomas does make me feel like I'm dealing with a child. I've no choice but to flatter him with a humble attitude. Oh, right, you did the laundry, didn't you? Thank you.
Huh? Oh, yeah, of course, huh? That was the deal. You know, without me the house wouldn't function, haha.
I swallowed what I wanted to say and praised Thomas. Thomas seemed pleased with that. Indeed, Thomas does his share of the household chores as agreed, but when it comes to laundry, he doesn't look at the care labels or use a net. He just throws everything in and pushes one button to wash and dry. So occasionally, Thomas complains about clothes shrinking or getting pilled. If that counts as properly doing the chores, I wonder how well I'm actually managing. But I never voiced my dissatisfaction. The one time I did, it led to a huge fight.
Why didn't you quit your job and do everything yourself? That's why I said it when we got married. I should have never listened to anything you said. Just like Betty told me.
Thomas raged and hurled insults at me, then stopped talking to me for about 2 weeks. Of course, during that time, he didn't do his share of the work, leaving me to handle everything. Enduring a bit here and there is better for me than feeling so drained, both mentally and physically. Indeed, as he said during our argument, Thomas was originally not supportive of my working.
Betty said there's nothing good about a married woman working outside. That's why I want you to stay at home.
I don't know why Thomas's sister said that, but I was willing to go along with it, if that's what Thomas wanted. But it turned out we couldn't make ends meet on Thomas's salary alone. We weren't in a situation where we could live on ideals alone, so I desperately tried to convince him to let me keep working. My company is a major one and the pay is good. If we both worked, we might have some leeway. Thomas reluctantly agreed to my earnest plea, leading to our current situation. Despite everything, whether half-heartedly or not, Thomas did share in the household chores. It was a fact that even that much was a help. Then, Thomas's birthday approached. We hadn't done anything extravagant to celebrate since we got married. We usually celebrated at home with my home-cooked meals, but this year, now that I had been promoted and my salary had increased, I decided to celebrate his birthday with a hotel dinner. When the day came and I bought him a gift, Thomas was pleasantly surprised and enjoyed the steak course.
This is the best meal I've ever had, but are you sure we can afford this?
It's your special day. I got a raise since becoming a supervisor and we'll save a bit from now on. No complaints about the side dishes, okay? We joked and ended the day like that. But I didn't notice Thomas smiling smugly at that moment. A few days later, Thomas asked,
Hey, you said your salary went up, right? How much? Being a supervisor must mean a good raise, right?
He started pestering me about it. Before his birthday, supervisor seemed like a taboo word. Neither of us would mention it, but as soon as he heard about the raise, he quickly changed his tune.
Being a supervisor is amazing. It's all because you worked so hard.
He started praising me like that. At first, I couldn't keep up with this sudden change and just gave a wry smile to brush it off, but he was insistent about the salary. I continued to completely ignore it, but when I kept ignoring him...
What's the matter? Got too cocky becoming a supervisor? You must be looking down on me. A mere employee at a small to medium-sized company.
He sulked. It was just a splurge for your birthday. We're not rich, so stop talking about money. I finally snapped, and that put an end to his persistence, but it was clear that Thomas was fixated on my money. If I knew it would come to this, I wished I hadn't become a supervisor, or even celebrated his birthday. There was a bit of regret, but it wasn't all bad. After becoming a supervisor, I was entrusted with a significant project. Though it meant more overtime, Thomas was supportive.
You're a supervisor and busy with work. I'll do what I can.
He started preparing dinner, even if it was frozen meals. Even if it was because of his fixation on money, his cooperation made that birthday meaningful, perhaps. And when the project finally settled down, Thomas asked with bright eyes,
So? You're busy, so you must be getting a special bonus, right?
I was surprised by his question. No, why would there be one? I said wearily, astonished. Then Thomas exploded.
What? Months of overtime and no bonus? What was the point of me helping then? What a crappy company.
I didn't have the energy to argue back. The point of helping? Is there supposed to be a meaning behind a couple's cooperation? The thought of him belittling someone's company was unbelievable. That was the moment I couldn't hold back anymore. What? I thought I was grateful for your help, but this is what you think? I'm disappointed. In response to my retort, Thomas fired back, and then I retorted again, leading to a full-blown argument. Enough! Let's stop. I'm tired and going to sleep. I forcibly ended the conversation like that. After that, I couldn't even stand to look at Thomas's face for a while. Sometime later, I had to go on a business trip. We hadn't spoken since the argument, but I had to let him know since I would be away from home. I'm going on a business trip for 2 nights and 3 days, so please take care of things while I'm gone. I said that, but Thomas, perhaps still angry, didn't respond. Without making up, I left for my business trip. Busy with work for 3 days, I found myself wondering how Thomas was doing during my free moments. Was he eating properly? I was worried, but too prideful to make contact. The time apart allowed me to cool off. Planning to apologize when I got back, I finished my 3 days of work, bought some delicious souvenirs, and headed home. I'm back! But as soon as I entered the house, I sensed something was off. There were many unfamiliar shoes in the shoe rack, and there was the smell of cooking, not from frozen food, unmistakably the aroma of a home-cooked meal. Thomas can't cook. I rushed into the living room. Oh, Anna, welcome back. Betty, what are you doing here? To my surprise, it was Thomas's sister Betty standing in the kitchen, visible from the living room. On the couch, lounging as if it was the most natural thing in the world, was Thomas's niece, Lisa. It didn't look like just a visit. It seemed like our house had gained extra belongings. Even this couch wasn't here before I left for my trip. I stood dumbfounded at the entrance to the living room, unable to comprehend the situation. Dinner will be ready soon, said Betty nonchalantly. While I couldn't take my eyes off her, I approached Thomas, who was sitting in a living room chair, and spoke to him. What's going on, Thomas?
As if it's a big deal. I decided to live with Betty and Lisa. The move's already done.
Thomas said it as if it were the most natural thing. That's what's going on, so please be nice. Betty added with a smile, but I couldn't bring myself to smile, moving in their stuff without asking, deciding to live together without consultation. Wait a minute, you can't just decide that on your own.
What's the problem? You're always too busy with overtime to do any housework anyway. It's better if we live together and Betty takes care of the house.
Thomas retorted to my attempted objection. Betty had Lisa at 20 and divorced a few years later. Since then, she had been a single mother raising Lisa, now 18, on her own. I knew this, and I knew Thomas was fond of his older sister, Betty, but I never imagined it would lead to us living together. Come on, Anna, Betty said without any hesitation. Nice to meet you, murmured Lisa quietly. My head hurt, but there was no way I could accept the situation so silently. I'm sorry, but I can't live with you all, I stated clearly. However, Thomas laughed at me as if it were a joke.
Why not? Since you can't even do housework properly, you might as well just keep working.
I was irked by his words. Originally, it was Thomas who opposed me working. Jealous of my promotion, then mooching off me when my salary increased, and now telling me to keep working. It was unbelievable. So selfish.
What's up? Got a complaint? If you have a complaint, you might as well do whatever you want, too.
Sensing my irritation, Thomas retorted with a scowl. Fine, I'll do whatever I want then. But I was the one who wanted to be angry. Unable to stay silent, I said that to Thomas. After that, there was no more conversation between Thomas and I went to sleep. Betty and Lisa, having apparently given up their own home, naturally moved their bed into our home and slept here. The room that was supposed to be for children had been turned into their room without my consent, and I was more saddened than angry. Yet, work doesn't wait for anyone. The next day, as soon as I got to work, I requested a meeting with the director. I decided to take on a task that hadn't been proposed before.
That's great. I'm grateful you're taking it on.
It's a good opportunity, so I'll do my best for my own sake. After making a promise to the director, I immersed myself in work. I found it better to be at work than to go home, unable to forgive Thomas. A few days later.
Hey, Anna, how long are you going to sulk? Just come back already.
Thomas sent that message to me. I had been going home, but only when everyone was asleep, and I left before anyone woke up. But for the past few days, I hadn't even been going home, because I had found a new place to live. come back. I can't just do that right away, I said, laughing.
Can't do it right away. What do you mean?
I'm in Italy right now. It's the middle of the night here. Plus, Betty's there to take care of the house, right?
Huh?
Thomas paused, taken aback by my yawning reply. It was night for Thomas, but it was already the middle of the night over here. Coming back from work to this conversation with Thomas was just exhausting. Finally getting it, Thomas suddenly raised his voice.
What? Italy? You went on a trip without telling us?
It's not a trip. I've been living here for the past 3 days.
What are you talking about?
But my next words seemed to confuse Thomas again. Had he forgotten what he said about doing whatever I wanted? I could almost see him gaping over the phone, and I said, laughing, "What I mean is you said to do whatever I wanted, and I said I would. So I accepted the Italy assignment that had been offered to me before. They've prepared a condo for me to live in, and it's a beautiful place."
You know there's a limit to doing whatever you want. It's about our life together, and you decide on your own.
Thomas sounded quite upset. Surely, if we had discussed it, we would have decided to move here together. But this assignment in Italy was like a prize for my work achievements. Thomas was to blame for getting mad about the bonus and not listening to other things. Yet, didn't he feel odd saying that? He decided on his own to live with Betty and Lisa. What he had said was coming back to haunt him. Did you consult me about anything that affects our life together?
Well,
I'll be working here, and I'll return to the States as a manager in 2 years. Until then, have a nice life with Betty and her family. I hung up the phone. Thomas must be feeling uneasy now, his own actions and words preventing him from living abroad. A few days later, Thomas contacted me. Wondering what it was about, I answered, and he sounded cheerful.
Guess where I am?
I don't care, I'm working. I'm hanging up.
Believe it or not, I'm in front of your condo.
Huh. I was surprised by his words. He had called my work to get my address, saying it was necessary for some procedures, and relying on that address, he had come over on his own. What about your work?
I took some time off and...
Yoo-hoo, I'm here too. To my surprise, I heard Betty's voice over the phone. Why she had come too was beyond me. I was exasperated.
So, we're both waiting out here. Hurry home.
Both? What about Lisa? Lisa has a test, so she couldn't come, Betty said nonchalantly. I was astounded again. Is that so? But I won't be coming back today. I have a dinner meeting far away. Even if they had contacted me, I wasn't in the mood to entertain them, and I couldn't accommodate them on such short notice. I had a social gathering with another company and wasn't planning to go home.
Huh? And what should we do?
Thomas sounded panicked, but that wasn't my concern. Stay at a hotel or something? Anyway, that's the situation. Also, I'm in the middle of work. Bye. I hung up the phone. They might be making a fuss, but I didn't have time for that. They'd probably give up and look for a hotel. However, I had underestimated the situation. In the middle of the social gathering, my phone rang. Excuse me. I excused myself and answered the phone. Puzzled by the unfamiliar number, it turned out to be from the police. Excuse me, a burglar? Apparently, there was an intruder at my house looking for an open window. What they found was a pet door. I didn't own a pet, so I hadn't noticed, but the house built by my company had one. Of course, I had no idea it even existed, so it wasn't locked. The intruder tried to enter through it and got stuck, unable to move forward or back, and was spotted by a passerby who then called the police. What a foolish burglar. Encountering such a fool could be dangerous. I was relieved I wasn't home at the time.
The person claims to be your sister. Do you know anything about this?
I went pale at those words. Sister? Could it be? I don't have a sister. The only possibility was Thomas's sister Betty. As expected, the police mentioned her name. I was mortified. Unbelievable that she tried to force her way in through such a small entrance, making even family relations embarrassing. Anna, help me, come pick me up. I could hear Betty causing a scene over the phone. What a nuisance. Though I could have gone to pick her up, I told the police. She may be my sister-in-law, but I can't forgive her for trying to break into my house. Please investigate thoroughly what she intended to do in my home. The police responded to my complaint. Betty was severely reprimanded. However, since she didn't speak Italian, there was a lot of confusion and stress, leading her to break down crying.
You must not cause trouble for your sister anymore,
a police officer told her in simple English. Okay. To which Betty tearfully repeated. Getting caught by the police in Italy must have been a good lesson for her. Out of a desire for her to truly reflect, I didn't go to pick her up on the day she contacted me. The next day, thinking she might have reflected, I went to pick her up, and Betty broke down crying in relief at the sight of me. Where was Thomas during all this? Only Betty was caught. Thomas was probably relaxing in a hotel, which I hadn't really considered. It turned out that while Betty was being arrested, Thomas was enjoying a meal alone, believing Betty would bring money from my house and splurging at a restaurant. He was oblivious to Betty's arrest, ended up getting drunk, and fell asleep at the restaurant. The restaurant, troubled by an unresponsive Thomas, called the police, and he woke up in an unfamiliar police station. However, since my house and the restaurant were in different jurisdictions, Thomas was taken to a different police station. My wallet, my passport, where's my phone? Unfortunately, while passed out, his bag was stolen, losing his wallet, passport, and phone. Unable to speak Italian and arrested for dine and dash, Thomas was unable to ask for help and ended up in police custody. This was discovered after Betty was released. Where's Thomas? Betty's troubling question was the first time I realized Thomas was missing. After hearing the details and following Betty's story to the restaurant, I learned from the owner that Thomas had been taken by the police. Betty, Anna. When we visited the police station, Thomas, pale-faced, broke down crying at the mention of our names. I sighed at the déjà vu. I explained the situation to the restaurant owner, paid the bill, and apologized. Though a theft had occurred, the owner, feeling sorry for Thomas, decided not to press charges for the dine and dash. But what followed was a hassle. We had to go through the lost passport procedures and contact the embassy. Because of Betty and Thomas, I couldn't work properly for several days. When I was about to explode with frustration, Thomas said, "Oh, I thought it was all over, but I'm glad it worked out." Really glad. Let's go back to Emma's place for now. I lost my temper at their carefree words. Good? It's not good at all for me. After causing so much trouble for others, how can you say it turned out well? Sorry, but go back to your own house and don't ever come here again. Silenced by my fury, they both fell quiet. But I'll be filing out the divorce papers this weekend. Divorce? Thomas shouted. Betty, standing beside him, was shocked, looking back and forth between me and Thomas. There's no benefit in continuing a marriage with you. Betty moves in uninvited, gets arrested in Italy without speaking a word of Italian, and interrupts my work. It seemed they finally understood the gravity of my anger. Heads bowed, they remained silent. And passers-by laughed at the sight of two adults being scolded by a woman. But my anger was far from settled. So I'm divorcing you. You have no objections, right? Having been rescued from the police by me as a thank you, I deserve to live my life freely, right? Yes. Thomas reluctantly agreed, deeply reflecting on his actions, and quietly responded. Thomas initially applied for a 4-day leave from work. However, due to the arrest and lost passport, he missed his return flight by a wide margin. Without a cell phone, he couldn't extend his leave. Thomas had completely forgotten about work and missed his own troubles. Furthermore, he hadn't shared any info about his current project, planning to take all the credit. His delayed return and lack of communication led to a missed important meeting, resulting in the termination of all deals with that client. Despite the circumstances causing significant losses to the company, got Thomas fired. Betty, infuriated by this, had a huge argument with Thomas. Originally quitting his job and moving in as a housekeeper was akin to what he did. However, Thomas ended up divorcing me and resigning from his job. With no breadwinner, that house now seems to be the site of constant fierce arguments. Why I know all this is thanks to information from Lisa. Kids can't choose their parents, but if I could, I'd definitely choose you over Mom. Divorcing Thomas meant Lisa and I were no longer aunt and niece by marriage. However, she still contacts me for career advice or to talk about her mom, as if I were her sister. I'm happy she thinks of me that way, even though we weren't together that much. I continued working in Italy. I was supposed to return to America after 2 years, but now there's no need, and I plan to keep working here. I've also built a good relationship with a man I met locally. I'm ready to let go of the bad memories in the beautiful Italian sea and strive for new happiness.